Okay, cool.
Okay, I just started. Maybe we should give him a few seconds just to.
Yeah, and since he started the meeting, the recording will go to his email. That's
Okay.
what happened last time.
Yeah. All right. So what did you do while we wait? What did you do for your practicum?
I did the family relations,
Oh, okay.
the family relations one where we taught people
Oh, okay.
and did a class for each week. Did you just do a workshop?
I
Not
did
just do a workshop, but
I did an online curriculum, so I created a blog.
oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. All right, you're back.
So sorry, guys. I don't know what happened.
You're totally fine. I'm recording now, but it should.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it is still recording.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chloe started it right away, so it should come to your email again, though.
Okay. Yeah, I can upload it. That's not the issue. I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss Chloe's answers.
Yeah. No.
I think we got him. When the recording stopped, she started it right away, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me save what I have of the first part into the folder.
Then I guess we just need to answer the second part of that question, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I've got the first part saved into the folder, and I'll upload that before I download the second part.
Okay.
So we're still on question 1, though, right?
Yeah, just the second part of it.
Okay. Okay. Somebody else go first.
Okay, so it's why is the doctrine of the family so important to have in your heart, to be passionate, persistent? And I put, for me personally, the main thing is if it's in my heart and I'm really believing in it, then that helps me to have the Spirit with me. And when the Spirit is with me, then I can be more passionate and persistent about something. In promoting, protecting, and defending the family is actually what I put.
Yeah, I put that having the doctrine in our hearts, it kind of like exemplifies like our efforts, and like it gives us a more meaningful approach because we have it there and we know. And I also said that it benefits us because it brings like a certain spirit into our actions. So
yeah, totally.
I basically just said that if you're passionate about something, you're more willing to go to extremes. It's basically just like our conversion to the gospel. When we truly become converted, we do things on our own accord. We're willing to go and be actively engaged in doing things, and we don't have to be commanded by somebody else to do things. In this case, because he was passionate and persistent, he kept seeking out other ways or better ways to do things, and didn't have to be prompted or, well, after he first happened, to be prompted and pushed into doing what he was doing. Once he caught that fervor, he just kept going.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. And even though he knew it was going to be difficult and maybe even futile, that we still have to advocate. We won't be easily dissuaded.
All right. So how did Wilbur employ a theoretical Bronfenbrenner approach to become a more effective advocate? Identify at least one thing in each system and be specific. And I'm not even 100% sure that I went the right way with this. But I discussed, or my bullet points were the microsystem, were his immediate friends and the families of the slaves that he felt he could influence, because even the slaves had families that were being affected by what was going on. The mesosystem was Parliament and his hosting of the people in the community around him, bringing them in for meetings and meals. And obviously the macro system was the changing of the entire law in England about slavery and the far-reaching effects that had on the entire empire of England at the time, which was 30 years before we had the abolishment of slavery here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he went the right direction with that, because that's what I got out of it too, was to take each of those systems and put how he used it.
Yeah, I did pretty much the same thing. I expounded a little bit more because I'm terrible at the micro, meso, exo. So I kind of try to expand a little bit more after that. But yeah, that's about the gist of it.
Yeah, I just put my bullet points there, and I thought, so like, I hope I have like the exosystem. I put that he used the mass media, such as it was at the time, like the newspaper, to get his message out. Is that that's the exosystem, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And then that resulted in that boycott of sugar.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, was one of the results of it anyway. And then I thought that for the chronal system, and I hope that I did that one right too, that the French Revolution and the American Revolution kind of helped set the stage a little bit for Parliament to like realize that the voice of the people mattered. So over time with those revolutions happening, it influenced British politics too.
It's a good point, Shauna. Anybody want to add anything about 2? All right. 3 is, how did Wilbur and his fellow advocates do and share their research? What evidence did they provide to persuade those opposing or on the fence? Shauna, did you want to go first?
Okay. So I put that their research was mainly gathered through hearing and reading firsthand experiences of people that were involved in the slave trade in some way. Like Equiano wrote and published a book about his experience as an African prince and then being captured into slavery. And then John Newton, that was the name of the priest, right, that used to be a captain of a slave ship.
Yep.
So he wrote his confessions and what he experienced, and then they also did the petition showing, they had over those 300,000 signatures. And then so that also told some stories about the slavery and stuff, but they also had like visual aids, I guess, if you want to call them that. The chains and he built a box that was to the dimensions of the space that the slaves were held in. And then my favorite part was when all those people were out there on the boat laughing and partying, and they got to the ship, and he told them everything that happened on that ship, and they could smell it. And I think that probably was the most powerful thing he could have done as far as getting his message out.
Yeah, I pretty much put all the exact same things. I also added the mass media as well. That's how they kind of shared it, and the personal stories, the petition, the book. And then also I wrote that the bringing the people on the boat and letting them like smell it, or almost like ambushing them practically, like, because they were kind of taken back that he was there, and then telling them to take the handkerchief away from their noses. And I'm surprised that they actually did, just because they knew it smelled bad, but they decided to anyways. I feel like that kind of showed that people were willing to listen to him, even if they were like using slaves or not totally siding with him or understanding like why he was going to those efforts. And so that was interesting to me. And then also the chains at dinner that they put on the table to get him to even like realize what was going on.
That's a really good point about the handkerchiefs. I hadn't even thought about the symbolism there of how it, they were actually listening to him when they took those away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of echoed some of what Shauna said. I talked about the petitions, the interviews, gathering information from multiple sources, the former slave ship masters, the accountants, and the insurance companies. The fact that these ships were insured for X number of slaves, but they were carrying twice as many of that number based on the size of the cubicles or the compartments that they were putting in. And they shared all their information at Parliament, trying to get the information across and they studied the arguments of their opponents and were able to refute the arguments of the opponents with facts they had been able to dig up. So there was a whole process there of knowledge and being able to have that information available so that you could countermand claims that were being made on the other side.
Ooh, that's a really good point. I hadn't even thought about making sure they knew their opposition's stance and what they were putting forth.
Yeah, that plays right into the next question about how did the film portray the importance of working with and learning from others in a group. What has family advocacy collaboration taught you, and why do you think it's a good idea to discuss your thoughts with your peers each week in the Zoom meetings? Chloe, did you want to go first this time?
Yeah, sorry, 1 second. Let me reread that question. So I feel like they really emphasized in the movie just like the value of working together, because I feel like if they didn't have that group that they did, or that really, I forget his name or his role, but the really important guy that kind of came in and he like took off his wig and he was like, "So do we drink here?" I don't remember what his role was. But like it's just cool to see that like people saw the value in it and they were able to make a difference together, because there's no way that he could have made a difference just himself. Like he had to have those people on his side to help. And it's just interesting to see like how far their efforts really went. And why do you think it is a good idea to discuss your thoughts? Oh, I think it's a good idea to discuss our thoughts with our peers each week in the Zoom meetings, because I feel like it gives people a chance to kind of reflect on their own thoughts, because sometimes we have different thoughts going through our minds, and it's a good reality check to hear someone else's, even if it doesn't totally line up with yours. And then also maybe to gain a better understanding of like what we're learning, because I can't tell you how many times I went into our Zoom meetings and was like, I don't really know how I feel about this lesson, or just being able to gain more insight on everything and understand it better. So, yeah.
Yeah, I wrote down that different ideas come from different places. All of us have a different background and different experiences, so we view things differently, and getting an idea from a different perspective can sometimes be game-changing because it causes you to have a new insight or a way to apply something. When we work as a group, we all benefit from our individual strengths, making the group stronger as well. And I referenced Elder Bednar's most recent talk in October General Conference of 2018, where he talked about how all the fibers or strands of a rope are not all that strong by themselves, but when you bind them and twist them into a rope, it becomes much stronger as a whole than each individual item is by itself. And that's the same thing we accomplish by joining together in groups. That collaborating in our family advocacy helps us to see weaknesses in our argument, because your group, the people who are working with you, bring it to you first, so you can be prepared before the opposition attacks you on it. You know, when we gave our speeches, we were able to talk about stuff and then we asked questions afterwards, and knowing that people who are even with us want to know what that answer is, we can then go research it. And when we present it in front of an opposition, now when they go, oh yeah, well, what about this? We already have that answer because our group brought it to us first and helped us to perfect our presentation or perfect our performance. And yeah, the last thing I have in that bullet point is discussing our thoughts with our peers lets us test the waters, basically, and we get feedback on our argument to make sure it's properly persuasive and not just an argument, not just, oh, I feel this way, or I think this way, or I believe this, but to actually be able to back it up with valid facts, valid information, and valid research.
Yep, that's basically the same things I put. I did put that, you know, when, like Chloe said, that he couldn't have done it by himself. None of them could have done it by themselves. And so when we collaborate, we bring together our voices and our experience and our strengths, and then our impact can increase exponentially.
Yep. Right. What parallels do you see between Wilbur and Captain Moroni in Alma 46? What is a Christian and professional family advocate, and how did Wilbur exemplify that? And how can you be effective and Christ-like against such loud and often degrading voices? And I think it's my turn to go first. So I put down as bullet points that we need to not allow ourselves to stoop to their level. We need to maintain our bearing and our attitude at all times. That's something that both Captain Moroni and Wilbur did. They maintained their, I don't want to say objectivity because they were passionate about it, but they maintained their professionalism and didn't fall down into the mires of backbiting or infighting and doing things the wrong way. Another bullet point I had is that both Moroni and Wilbur sought the advice of the Lord in what they should do. We turn to him in prayer, and we do the same thing, or we should be doing the same thing in our own lives and in our own advocacy. We should turn to the Lord and find out what the Lord wants us to, or figure out what we want to do, and then turn to the Lord for confirmation on if that's what we should be doing. And the last one I had was just that each of them had their own title of liberty that they felt was worth proclaiming to their respective societies. And when they had it figured out, they fought to get it presented, one in a physical manner and the other in a, governmental vocal expression. He didn't, pick up swords and go out and start shooting everybody in England, but he fought very hard to make his point be heard and to get his point across.
Yeah, I pretty much put a lot of the same things. One big thing was that they're both disciples of Christ, and they both cared about what Heavenly Father wanted them to do. And I also put that people respected Wilbur, just like they respected Captain Moroni as well. Like, he was a very respected person that people knew that they were doing worthy things. Let's see what else I put. I put that the devil didn't have power over Wilbur, and I think that kind of relates to a little bit of what Andre said, just that they didn't really let that temptation or maybe their defeats get in the way or slow them down. You kind of see it a little bit when Wilbur's sick and he's kind of at his worst. He kind of hits a rock bottom a little bit, but he still kind of strives to stick with it.
Yeah, that's a lot of the same things that I put too. I also put that they tried to, before they went to battle, they tried to appeal to the honorableness, what's the right word? And the humanness, of the honorability and the humanness of the people that they were fighting against, I guess, before they actually went to battle with them. And I don't know if this really applies, but one thing that really impressed me was that when everybody was arguing about stuff, and then Wilbur just said, I'm going to sing to them. And he used that talent to kind of calm everything down so that they could actually get back to a debate. That was kind of an unexpected thing, I thought. For me, I thought it was unexpected that, so we can do things that are unexpected too, and using the talents that God gave us.
All right. Change tactics.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
My answers, and I'm sorry guys, but the further I got in the 11 questions, the shorter my bullet points got.
Mine too.
Number 6, Marsha Barlow spoke on persuasive speaking and writing. Did Wilbur and others exemplify any of Marsha's ideas, and how so?
Is it my turn to go first? I don't know. Okay.
Sure.
So when there was 2 times that she spoke, right? that we had speeches from her that we listened to. So in one of them, she mentioned that we should try to find common ground and look for our highest shared values. And so Wilbur did this as he told the members of Parliament that he knew they were honorable men who cared about people and who were humane. He also shared statistics and data about the slave trade, and I went into some details about that, and stories. So he used that narrative strategy that she talked about, where he told the story of self, of why this was important to him, the story of us, and the story of now. So he really told his audience why this should matter to them, the effects that it was having on the lives of human beings and on their nation and on the history of their nation. And then he had a plan for what to do and a call to action for them.
Yeah, I wrote, my main thing in this one was just that she really emphasized the personal stories and like how they can leave a big impact. And I feel like he tried to take the situation and he tried to show that to like the wealthier class that like these are real people, and these are real situations going on, and that it mattered and that they mattered. And so, and they, you know, he did that by bringing those people to the slave boat thing and letting them smell and kind of see the conditions of it. And then also the box that he made that he gets out of in the kitchen after that person walks out. I feel like he just really tried to like emphasize and have other people see like this is like what they're dealing with, and you just really try to like humanize the situation and show people like this is what's going on and it's not good.
Well, both of your answers are much better than the bullet points I have. I talked about how they did exemplify the ideas that she presented because they allowed their passion and their fervency for the subject matter to carry through, and that you could feel the conviction that they had in their testimony when they were talking about the subject matter. But I wish I had remembered about the personal stories and everything and been able to add that in before I submitted last night, because I think I would obviously get a better grade that way, but and improve myself by having remembered that information. So, number 7, what role did the government, policy, and religious freedom play in the fight of the slave trade? Did you see their political system being pro-family? Why or why not? Chloe.
So I think this one was a little bit harder for me. I think Wilbur did like everything that he possibly could to change the situation and to get the government to see like what was happening wasn't okay. And so I think the government kind of played the role of like I don't know how to explain this. They played the role of change. Like they took one of the hardest people, the hardest groups to kind of switch, and they eventually did it. And so I think that the role they played, I don't know if I have like a specific name or term, but I just think that they were able to kind of take like that big thing and they were able to kind of change its mind and get things to kind of switch. So that's pretty much what I wrote about it.
Okay. So was their political system pro-family?
Oh, I think not. I think they were pro-family for their own families, but not for others. I think that they were pro-family if it benefited them and their family. And I think even like, because if you think about it, like they were taking those slaves away from their families and causing them to, you know, work for them and just do these horrific things. So I think, no, they were not pro-family. And I think even in the end, they weren't totally pro-family either, just because like, I don't know, they didn't do it out of like this like feeling. It was more like they heard the people telling them what they wanted, and so they went for it. So
They needed to give in or they were going to be overthrown, right? Rebellion.
yeah, exactly. So I don't even think that they did it for the right reasons. It was mainly just because it's like, well, this is what our people want, not because it's right.
Okay. I put down that the political system first used its power to prevent and forestall the changes which were coming, which made things impossible to change because nobody wanted to be on the opposite side of the government. You know, you became a traitor, you became treasonous, and therefore you could be killed, subject to, imprisonment or everything else. Later, when enough changes were made in the hearts and minds of the people, the government, instead of actively opposing or the change or supporting the status quo, they then stood back and allowed things to change, but they didn't help change occurring. They weren't a progressive government. They were just, okay, we understand that if we continue to prevent this, we're going to turn into the bad guys even more than we are an active antagonist, and therefore people are going to start fighting against us. I definitely did not see their political system as being pro-family because everyone in the government was making money off of the current system and no one was willing to see it change. When you look at the religious freedom and the fact that they were not pro-family, I put down as a bullet point that church and state were both controlled by the king. There was no religion other than that was allowed by the king at the time in England. And he had his own best interests at heart and his wallet, and family or families of others was not the first among his concerns.
Yeah, that's what I put, that I didn't think they were family oriented. It was more commerce, business, and the economy that took precedence over human life and over their families. And I also put that the government was mostly like the nobility, right? And I felt like they were kind of out of touch with what was really happening in their country and in the British colonies, that they were removed from what was happening, and so it didn't really matter to them as long as their pockets were being lined. And there was a lot of bribery and going on too. Like they told Wilbur that his vote was lost because 4 men took tickets to the opera. I don't know if you remember that.
They used that later.
Yeah. And then
I like how they turned it around and they used it to prevent the others from being able to vote against them.
Yep, they did. But so I didn't see religious freedom coming a lot in there, except that people could state their religious views in public and in churches because there was no separation of church and state. But for the family thing too, I put that the men themselves didn't seem to be very pro-family. Like Wilbur had that dream where they were at the opera and they were womanizing there. I got the impression that those women were not their wives, but so that seems kind of anti-family to me. And then they were always at their club playing cards and not really being with their families. And this is where I put that part where Henry did promote marriage, because I didn't know where else to put it and I wanted to put it in there. So he did promote marriage by saying that marriage and health are twins. So, but yeah, I didn't think it was at all a pro-family government.
Number 8, do you feel that Wilbur used his time on earth well? How did you see him showing the elements of consecration that Elder Christofferson spoke of? My 2 bullet points are that the simple fact that we're learning about him, watching a movie about him, 200 years later, and all the positive changes he made throughout his life, I would definitely say he did use his time well. In addition to when it comes to the matter of consecration, where we give what we have to the Lord and we use it in the service of the Lord, Wilbur used his time, his efforts, his money, and his talents to benefit others around him. So absolutely, he was consecrated to the work of the Lord in doing what he did.
Yeah, I put exactly the same things. I think he uses time well, and yeah, all the same.
Yeah, I thought I looked at Elder Christopherson's talk to see what those 5 things were. So I thought that Wilbur exemplified this quote from Elder Christopherson that said, "True success in life comes in consecrating our lives, that is our time and choices, to God's purposes. In so doing, we permit him to raise us to our highest destiny." And I also thought it was interesting that because he wanted his mind to be sharp and his body not to be wasting away any more than it was, he decided to stop taking the laudanum, the opioids that were clouding his mind and ultimately harming his body, because he knew that he would need to have a clear mind and a healthy body to complete his work.
Good point. Great point.
And he was never idle. He was either playing with his family and taking care of them or working on his government and advocacy stuff.
9, any other profound thoughts or personal insights from the movie that are related to child and family advocacy? Shauna?
So I put that, let's see, I put it's not just enough to be passionate about advocating. Action must be taken, allies must be found and recruited, and evidence must be gathered, organized, and presented. And then I noticed that the advocacy in the movie was done by peaceful means. There wasn't any violence involved in the way that Wilbur and his associates advocated. And I also thought the movie was a great example of not giving up. There's always something that can be done. It just may require thinking outside the box a little or even a lot. And it's important to have contacts, mentors, and allies in order to have support and get new ideas for promoting your cause.
I mainly just put Wilbur was really inspiring, especially just like his persistence in his advocacy and not really giving up or taking no for an answer. So, yeah.
I had 3 bullet points on this one, and I guess they're more like magazine points because they've got several bullets in each one. But I loved the quote from Francis Bacon about it is a sad fate for a man to die, too well known to everyone else, but still unknown to himself. It made me think similarly about how can we serve a master that we haven't known when it comes to Jesus Christ. You know, I loved the statement that Wilbur's friend said to him about if you make the world better in one way, it becomes better in all ways. And everybody always wants to think that, oh, I can't change the world. I'm not Martin Luther King. I'm not Nelson Mandela. I'm not Wilbur, you know, but it doesn't matter. You know, when we change something small, it still affects someone, you know, just like President Monson taught, you know, when we do something for the one, it may not make a difference to anybody else, but to that one person, it makes a huge difference. And the last point I put in there that was a personal insight is I love how when he had the meeting in his home, how the people were snapping and bickering with each other. And then he goes, we have a recorder as a secretary who's taking down every word that's being said. And all of a sudden they were not willing to say what they were saying, and they became more polite, and it kept things on track. And I think that that's one of the biggest problems with our society today is that everyone is being given anonymity through the internet and through screen names and through the ability to cast aspersions or to darken somebody else's doorstep without being held accountable. And if we were all held accountable, or we understood that we're going to be held accountable when the judgment is called up in heaven for everything that we say to people down here, the world would be a better place. So that was something that I found amusing and insightful from that meeting that they had. All right, number 10. What was your understanding of the doctrine of the family at the beginning of the semester, and how has it changed? Chloe's turn.
Okay. So, I mean, my understanding of the doctrine of the family, I can't say that I have like a full understanding of it just because this is like the first class that we've really like been introduced to like doctrine of the family. But I guess the main thing that I just put was just that it's increased and I have just a better knowledge and a better appreciation of it.
Okay. I wrote that I don't know that my understanding of the doctrine of the family has really changed. I'm a junior, almost a senior in my degree in marriage and family, so I've learned a lot of this before. But just like faith, where faith without works is dead, the doctrine of the family is dead if we only just believe it, read it, or understand it, and we don't actually do anything to further its progression or to spread it in our communities. It's not enough that I know the right things and do the right things. I need to be able to teach the right things, to live by example, and through words and deeds show others how our values can impact their lives so that our values can spread across the world instead of dwindling into just our communities.
So when I started this class, and this is actually my last semester, woohoo, just have to do my internship. But so my understanding was kind of based on the family, a proclamation to the world. So I knew the marriage was between a man and a woman, sexual relations should be kept inside marriage, and the men and the women have specific roles that benefit children. But through this class, I really learned that there's a lot more to it than just that basic doctrine, which I guess maybe isn't basic to some people, but I really have learned how integral the family is to the plan of salvation. And Sister Beck stated that the creation, the fall, and the atonement are all for the furthering of families. Without the family, there is no plan. There is no reason for mortal life. So families are everything. I mean, that's the whole purpose of being. And I also didn't understand like the amount of or the depth of the threats that the family is facing in the world today. I had no idea like what was going on in the UN or, you know, any of that stuff, how the family, I knew the family was under attack, but I just didn't realize how insidious and deep that threat is, and which makes me realize even more how important it is. How important it is to advocate and have that doctrine ingrained in our minds and our hearts so that we can advocate.
Sorry about that background noise.
It's okay.
Taking out the garbage. And number 11, last question. Picture your spouse and children, current or future, and write down some thoughts about how they will benefit from you taking this class. And this is probably my shortest answer of all, but I put down that I already know my family benefits from my taking this class, just from my being reminded weekly of the importance of the family and choosing to put them first before my work or other things going on in my life.
I like it. I mainly I put a bunch of different things, but my most important one is just that my spouse and my future kids will be able to see that their mom cares about the family and wants it to succeed and be successful, and that she's willing to like advocate for that, and I don't know, take time out of like her busy schedule to do it. So I think that it's such a good example. It'll teach my kids to care about it as well, or to find things that they're passionate about and advocate for that, or, you know, do their research on it. And I think it creates a stronger bond within my marriage, just because my husband knows that I take it seriously and I care about it, and I want to be successful, and I want other people to be successful as well.
Yeah, that's basically what I thought too. I feel like both of you, like it affects our marriages and our families now, just because our spouses and our families know that we're committed to having a successful and a happy marriage, so that we can have that example for our children and our grandchildren, as well as everyone else that we come in contact with.
All right. Well, thanks, guys, for meeting together for our final Zoom meeting for this class. Now we just need to, or I will upload the video tonight and get it posted. And then we need to do our peer evaluations and get those submitted. And I think then we do the self-test or I'm blanking on the word all of a sudden.
The
But yeah, we have the evaluation. Chloe, would you offer closing prayer?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
the announcement in lesson 13 said that we do not need to do the peer assessments.
Oh, really?
I will go and double check that.
Let me just look real quick.
You're saying the announcement?
It was the announcement from week 13. I have it right here. Hold on.
Okay.
So it was then the first time she gave us the instructions about the paper and said there'd be more. So it says, so when you meet together, please state your names at the beginning, email it by this. Please note you will not need to complete the peer review form. So does that mean we don't need to complete the peer review form?
I guess so.
Yeah, it says when you meet, one person needs to email the Zoom meeting link, include the names of all individuals. Please note you will not need to complete the peer review form. Okay. I missed that sentence completely. Thank you, Shauna.
Maybe that's why she's having you email it instead of post it in there,
Yeah.
since we don't have to do that part. Okay, sorry, I just wanted to make sure.
No, you're good.
No, you're right.
One less thing you
All
have
right,
to do.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and say the prayer.
All right.
All right, our dear Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for this meeting and being able to talk together and have a good final discussion before the end of our class. We're grateful for this university and for the opportunity to extend our knowledge through the internet and being able to make connections with others. We're grateful for thy church and thy gospel, and we love thee so very much, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Good luck with the rest of your school, guys.
You too.
Have a Merry Christmas.
You too. See you guys.
Bye.